You know what nobody tells you about healing? That sometimes the hardest wounds to close aren't the ones that hurt the most. They're the ones you never let yourself feel in the first place. And here's the paradox that'll mess with your head. The person who keeps showing up in your dreams, the one you thought you'd moved past, the one you've tried so hard to forget, they're not actually the problem. In fact, they're not even really there. What you're seeing is a mirror, and what's staring back at you isn't them. It's the fragments of yourself you left scattered in the ruins of that connection, pieces of your own soul that have been waiting in exile for you to finally come back and bring them home. Most people think recurring dreams about someone mean you're stuck, that you haven't healed, that there's something wrong with you for not being over it yet. But what if I told you that these dreams aren't a sign of weakness? They're actually your psyche's most sophisticated healing mechanism, a sacred ritual your unconscious performs night after night, trying to show you exactly where the wound lives and what it's still trying to teach you. The uncomfortable truth is this: your soul doesn't care about your ego's timeline for moving on. It doesn't care that you've deleted their number, thrown away the photos, or convinced everyone around you that you're fine. Your soul operates in mythic time, where nothing is ever truly forgotten and every unresolved emotion is still pulsing in the dark, waiting for you to stop running and finally turn around to face it. Here's what's really happening when their face appears behind your closed eyelids. Your unconscious is speaking a symbolic language that most people have completely forgotten how to interpret. That person has become an archetypal figure in your inner world, a vessel carrying specific emotional frequencies that your psyche needs you to recognize, feel, and integrate. Maybe they represent the part of you that felt fully alive, the part that knew how to be vulnerable without armor, the part that believed in possibilities you've since abandoned. Or maybe they've become the guardian of your deepest shame, your unworthiness, the wound that says "I'm not enough" in a voice that sounds exactly like their absence. Either way, the dream isn't about getting them back or even understanding what happened between you. It's about retrieving what you lost in yourself during that chapter, reclaiming the exiled fragments that got frozen in time when everything fell apart. So if you're tired of waking up confused, frustrated, or feeling like you're somehow failing at healing, if you're ready to finally understand what these dreams are really trying to tell you and how to decode the soul letters your unconscious keeps sending, then stay with me. Because what I'm about to share isn't another surface-level closure technique or positive thinking band-aid. This is about descending into the actual territory where transformation happens, learning to read the symbolic language of your own psyche, and discovering that the key to freedom was never in forgetting them, it was in remembering yourself. There's something unsettling about waking up with someone's face burned into your mind, someone you thought you'd moved past, maybe even forgot. But here's what most people don't realize. Your unconscious doesn't work like Netflix, randomly shuffling content from your past. It's way more intentional than that. When a specific person keeps showing up in your dreams night after night, it's not because your soul is stuck on them. It's because that face has become a living symbol, a mirror reflecting something unresolved deep within your own psyche. The dream isn't replaying a memory. It's staging a ritual, trying to show you a wound that's still asking for your attention. Think about it like this. Imagine your unconscious as an ancient oracle that speaks only in images, never in straightforward sentences. It can't just tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you've got some unprocessed shame from that relationship." Instead, it pulls up their face, because that face has become shorthand for a whole constellation of feelings: abandonment, unworthiness, unexpressed desire, maybe even rage you never let yourself feel. I've seen this in my own life, waking up confused after dreaming about someone I hadn't thought about in years, only to realize the dream came right after I'd felt that same specific type of rejection in a totally different context. The person in the dream? Just a symbolic placeholder for the original wound. The key here is understanding that the unconscious doesn't care about literal truth. It cares about emotional truth. That's why you might dream about an ex-lover when you're actually processing grief about a friendship that ended, or why your first heartbreak might reappear when you're facing a career disappointment. The face is just the vessel, the container your psyche has chosen to hold a particular frequency of pain or longing. And until you stop looking at the dream literally, until you stop asking why them, and start asking, what part of me does this mirror represent? The dream will keep looping, keep insisting, keep pulling you back into that same symbolic territory where something essential remains unfound. Your brain is kind of like a library where certain books never got properly shelved. They're just scattered on the floor, pages open, gathering dust, but still very much present. That's what happens with emotional memories that never got fully processed. When you go through something intense, a breakup that blindsided you, a betrayal you swallowed without speaking, a loss you had to get over too quickly because life demanded it, your nervous system files it away as unfinished business. And here's the thing, unfinished business doesn't just fade into the background, it becomes a ghost, a presence that haunts the corridors of your inner house, showing up uninvited, especially in dreams where your conscious defenses are down and the veil between worlds grows thin. The reason this particular person keeps appearing isn't random. It's because their image got fused with a specific traumatic imprint in your emotional memory. Let's say you experienced deep abandonment with them. Your psyche doesn't just remember the abandonment intellectually, it remembers it somatically, in your body, in your gut, in the way your chest tightens when certain songs play. So when something in your current life triggers that same abandonment frequency, maybe a friend cancels plans repeatedly, maybe you feel invisible at work, your unconscious pulls up that person's face like a file from the archives. It's saying, remember this feeling? We never dealt with it. It's still here, pulsing beneath everything else you're trying to build. I'll give you a real example. I once worked with someone who kept dreaming about a college relationship that ended badly. But when we dug deeper, the dreams always intensified during weeks when she felt creatively blocked or professionally stuck. The ex wasn't the real subject. He had become the archetypal symbol for potential that died before it could fully live. Her soul wasn't mourning him. It was mourning all the versions of herself she'd abandoned in that same way, all the creative fragments she'd left in ruins, until she recognized that pattern, until she gave those fragments the ritual space to return and be seen. The dreams persisted like a heartbeat in the dark, steady and relentless. Here's where things get really interesting, and maybe a little uncomfortable. The person you keep dreaming about isn't actually them anymore. They've become a screen, a blank canvas where your psyche projects all the parts of yourself you haven't fully owned or integrated yet. Think about what you felt with them. Maybe it was wild freedom, maybe deep vulnerability, maybe creative fire you haven't accessed since. Those qualities didn't disappear when they left. They got frozen in time, locked inside the memory of that connection, like insects trapped in amber. Your soul keeps returning to their image because it's trying to recover something that belongs to you, not to them. Some essential fragment of your own identity that got left behind in the wreckage. This is what Carl Jung meant when he talked about the shadow and projection. We tend to see in others what we can't yet see in ourselves. If you dream about someone who was adventurous and you felt alive around them, maybe what you're really mourning is your own sense of adventure that's been buried under responsibility and routine. If they were the ones who saw your potential when no one else did, perhaps you're grieving the part of you that stopped believing in that potential after they left. The dream becomes a psychic ritual, a nightly ceremony where your unconscious is literally trying to reunite you with these exiled aspects of yourself. It's not about getting them back, it's about getting you back. I've experienced this firsthand with dreams about a mentor figure from years ago, someone I admired deeply, but who eventually betrayed my trust. For the longest time, I thought the recurring dreams meant I hadn't forgiven them. But then I realized every time they appeared, I was in a period where I'd stopped trusting my own intuition, where I'd given my power away to external validation again. The dream wasn't about them at all. It was my soul showing me the pattern, holding up a mirror to the part of me that kept abandoning my inner oracle, my own knowing. Once I started reclaiming that, once I performed small rituals of self-trust, like honoring my gut feelings even when they didn't make logical sense, the dreams shifted, softened, and eventually faded into the background where they belonged. There's a specific kind of ache that comes with unresolved affection. It's not quite longing, not quite regret, but something that lives in the space between what was and what could have been. Your soul speaks in emotional languages that your rational mind often misinterprets. When desire shows up in these dreams, it's rarely about wanting the person back in a literal sense. It's your psyche using the language of Eros to say, there's still life force trapped here, still passion that never found its full expression. Know that desire isn't pointing backward to them, it's pointing inward to the parts of you that went dormant, the creative and sensual energies that got associated with their presence and then locked away when they left. Guilt works the same way, but it cuts even deeper. Maybe you dream about them and wake up feeling like you did something wrong, like you failed them or yourself in some fundamental way. That guilt is often your soul's attempt to process a wound around worthiness, the belief that you weren't enough or that you somehow caused the loss through your inadequacy. And loss? Loss is the psyche's way of marking sacred ground, of saying, something died here that mattered and we never held a proper funeral for it. Decode. These aren't just emotions floating randomly through your dreams. They're specific invitations from your unconscious, breadcrumbs leading you back to the exact coordinates where a part of your soul got fragmented and left behind in the forest of your own history. Think about someone who dreams repeatedly about an old flame and wakes up feeling both longing and shame. On the surface, it looks like unfinished romantic business. But dig a layer deeper, and you might find that person is currently in a relationship where they've dimmed their own light to keep the peace, where they've silenced their authentic desires to avoid conflict. The dream isn't actually about the ex. It's about the version of themselves who used to speak freely, who used to take up space without apologizing. The guilt? That's the soul's grief over self-abandonment. The desire? That's life force asking to be reclaimed. Your psyche is incredibly wise. It knows exactly which emotional language will get your attention, which frequency of feeling will finally make you stop and listen to what's been crying out in the silence all along. We live in a culture that treats emotional pain like a problem to be solved, something to get over as quickly as possible so we can move on with our lives. So when someone keeps showing up in your dreams, the instinct is to push harder, to try to forget them more aggressively, to shame yourself for not being healed yet. But here's the paradox. The more you try to bury what hurts, the louder it screams in the underground chambers of your psyche. Suppression doesn't make things disappear, it just forces them into the shadow, into the dark basement of your unconscious, where they grow teeth and claws. And dreams? Dreams are the crack in the door where all that suppressed material leaks back through, insisting on being witnessed, demanding the recognition you've been refusing to give it. Your nervous system is wildly intelligent, and it knows the difference between actual healing and performative moving on. You can tell yourself 1,000 times that you're over it, that it doesn't matter anymore, that you've released it and let it go. But if you never actually sat with the grief, if you never gave the anger permission to move through your body, if you never honored the loss with anything more than a mental decision to be positive, then nothing actually transformed. It just went underground, into the place where your soul keeps all the things you wouldn't let yourself feel. And at night, when your ego's defenses drop and the veil thins, those unfelt feelings rise up wearing familiar faces, staging elaborate dramas in your dreamscape because that's the only arena where they're allowed to exist. I remember a period in my life when I kept having intense dreams about someone I'd convinced myself I'd moved past. I'd done all the right things, journaling, therapy, dating other people, the whole spiritual bypass toolkit. But the dreams persisted, sometimes even intensifying. It wasn't until I stopped trying to transcend the pain and actually descended into it, allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I'd lost, to rage at the unfairness, to grieve not just the person, but the future I'd imagined, that something shifted. I created a small ritual one night, lit a candle, and spoke out loud everything I'd never let myself say. The dreams didn't vanish overnight, but their quality changed. They became gentler, less haunting, more like brief visits than desperate summons. The pulse in the dark finally had permission to beat in the light. When love gets interrupted, when a connection ends before it reaches its natural completion, it doesn't just fade away like morning fog. It gets suspended in what I call mythic time, a space outside ordinary chronology where the soul still lives in the eternal not yet of what could have been. This is where archetypes come alive, where your personal story intersects with ancient patterns that humans have been living out for thousands of years. Maybe your interrupted love carries the energy of Eros, that primal creative force of desire and longing that got cut off mid-flight, leaving you with a constant hum of unfulfilled potential. Or maybe it's more like Dionysus, the god of ecstasy and wildness, representing a part of you that felt fully alive and uninhibited with this person, and now that energy has nowhere to go, no outlet, so it circles endlessly in your dreams. Then there's Hecate, the goddess of crossroads and thresholds, the keeper of liminal spaces. She shows up in dreams about people who represented a turning point, a moment when you stood at a fork in the road and chose one path over another. These dreams aren't about the person. They're about the unresolved question of what if. They're about the version of yourself that took the road not traveled, the shadow life you might have lived if you'd made different choices. When Hecate energy is present in recurring dreams, your soul is trying to integrate the wisdom from both paths to retrieve something essential from the choice you didn't make so that it can inform the life you're actually living now. The person in the dream becomes a guardian of that threshold, holding space for a conversation your soul still needs to have with itself. Here's a practical example. Someone dreams repeatedly about a partner who wanted them to move abroad for an adventure, but they stayed behind for stability. Years later, the dreams persist and they feel haunted by what they should have done. But the real work isn't about regretting the choice. It's about recognizing that the Dionysian energy of adventure and spontaneity didn't die with that relationship. It just needs a new form, a new ritual container. Maybe that means taking smaller risks now, planning a solo journey, or bringing more playfulness into their current life. The archetype doesn't care about the specific person. It cares about the energy-finding expression. Once you identify which archetypal thread is weaving through your dreams, you can consciously work with it, give it what it needs, and free yourself from the endless loop of unfinished promises that keep your soul trapped between worlds. Let's get into the body for a moment, because your soul might speak in symbols, but your nervous system speaks in chemicals, and both languages matter when we're trying to understand why someone's face keeps haunting your sleep. Every time you dream about this person, your brain is literally recreating the neurochemical cocktail that was present during your most intense moments with them. If they were associated with excitement, novelty, or passion, your system floods with dopamine, the same reward chemical that lights up when you're falling in love, taking risks, or experiencing something thrilling. If the relationship ended in pain, betrayal, or sudden loss, cortisol gets released, stress hormones that put your body on high alert, essentially telling you, this matters, pay attention, don't forget this. Here's what most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't distinguish between a memory and a present experience when it comes to emotional intensity. So when you dream about this person, your body responds as if it's happening right now. Heart rate increases, palms might sweat, that familiar ache blooms in your chest. This isn't weakness or being stuck. It's your nervous system doing exactly what it evolved to do, which is mark significant emotional events with powerful biochemical signatures so you remember them. The problem is that these neural pathways get so deeply grooved, so well-traveled, that they become highways your unconscious takes automatically whenever something in your current life even remotely resembles the original emotional pattern. It's like muscle memory, but for feelings. I'll give you something concrete to work with. One woman I knew kept dreaming about a relationship that had felt like an emotional roller coaster, intense highs followed by devastating lows. Her nervous system had become addicted to that pattern, craving the dopamine spikes, even though her conscious mind knew the relationship was toxic. The dreams persisted because her body was literally going through withdrawal from that neurochemical drama. What helped wasn't just psychological work, it was somatic practice. She started doing things that regulated her nervous system in healthier ways. Cold showers for controlled stress response, dance for embodied dopamine release, breath work before bed to shift from sympathetic to parasympathetic activation. Over time, as she gave her body new ways to feel alive and present, the dreams lost their grip. Her system didn't need to keep returning to that old source of intensity because she was creating new, sustainable patterns of aliveness in her actual life. There's a haunting quality to unlived life. It has more power over us than almost anything we've actually experienced. When you keep dreaming about someone, it's rarely about what you had with them. It's about what you never got to explore, express, or complete. Maybe you never said the words that burned in your throat, never had the confrontation that could have brought clarity, never allowed yourself to be fully vulnerable or fully honest. Those unlived moments don't just evaporate, they crystallize in psychic time, becoming frozen points that your soul keeps circling back to, trying to find a way to thaw them, to bring them into some form of completion. The dream is your unconscious saying, there's still life here that was never given permission to unfold. This is why reunion fantasies rarely solve the problem, even when they actually happen. I've seen people reconnect with someone from their past, thinking that conversation or closure will finally end the dreams and obsessive thoughts. And sometimes it helps, sure, but more often they discover the person has changed, or they themselves have changed, and the actual encounter feels flat compared to the charged energy in their inner world. That's because the key was never in the external person. It was in what that person represented, in the unlived possibilities that got attached to their image. Maybe it was the chance to be seen in your fullness, to express desires you'd always kept hidden, to experience a level of emotional intimacy you've never allowed yourself since. Those needs don't get met by revisiting the past. They get met by finally giving yourself permission to live them now, in present time, in your actual life. Here's what symbolic release looks like in practice. Instead of trying to reconnect with the person or endlessly analyzing why they keep appearing, you create a ritual that honors the unlived life and consciously releases it. Write the letter you never sent, not to mail it, but to give voice to what was never spoken. Have an imaginal conversation where you say everything that remained unspoken. Let yourself feel everything that was suppressed, and then perform a closing gesture. Burn the letter, bury it, release it into running water. One person I worked with created a small ceremony where she gathered objects that represented different unlived possibilities with an X, spoke to each one about what it symbolized, and then released them with gratitude. The dreams didn't stop immediately, but their frequency and intensity dropped dramatically because her soul finally received the message. This chapter has been honored, witnessed, and can now rest in the abyss of what was never meant to be. Your dreams are love letters from the deepest part of yourself, the part that doesn't speak in words but in images, symbols, and feelings that bypass your rational defenses. When the same person keeps appearing, it's not harassment from your unconscious, it's an invitation written in the oldest language your soul knows. The problem is, Most of us have forgotten how to read this language. We treat dreams like random noise, weird brain static that doesn't mean anything, or we take them too literally and get stuck obsessing over the surface details. But if you learn to listen, really listen, these recurring dreams reveal themselves as carefully crafted messages, soul letters that contain precise instructions for what needs attention, what needs integration, what needs to finally come home to yourself. The first step in decoding the dream ritual is to stop asking why them and start asking better questions. What feeling dominated the dream? Longing, fear, anger, joy, grief? What was the setting? A childhood home, an unfamiliar landscape, a place that felt both strange and familiar? What was left unsaid, undone, or unresolved in the dream narrative itself? These details aren't random. They're breadcrumbs your psyche is leaving for you to follow back to the source wound. For instance, if you dream about this person in your childhood bedroom, the message might be about returning to an earlier version of yourself, reconnecting with innocence or creativity that got buried. If the dream always ends with you unable to speak, your soul might be pointing to a pattern of silencing yourself, of swallowing your truth to keep the peace. Here's a practice you can start tonight. Keep a dream journal by your bed, and when you wake from one of these recurring dreams, don't just write what happened. Write how your body felt, what emotions were present, and then ask the dream directly, "What are you trying to show me?" Sometimes the answer comes immediately. Sometimes it emerges over days or weeks of sitting with the question. I started doing this years ago with dreams about a friendship that ended badly, and slowly a pattern revealed itself. The dreams intensified whenever I was betraying my own boundaries in current relationships, whenever I was giving too much and receiving too little. The friend's face was just the oracle my soul chose to deliver a warning. Remember what happened last time you abandoned yourself for someone else's comfort. Once I saw the pattern, once I started honoring my boundaries in real time, the dreams transformed into something gentler, more like occasional reminders than urgent alarms. Your soul will keep sending these letters until you finally sit down and read them with the attention they deserve. You now hold something most people never discover: the ability to read your own soul's language, to understand that these dreams aren't random hauntings, but carefully crafted messages from the deepest part of yourself. But here's the part that matters more than anything else we've talked about. Knowledge alone doesn't heal. Understanding why someone appears in your dreams won't make them disappear. What changes everything is what you do next. The actions you take, the rituals you create, the courage you summon to finally face what's been waiting in the dark all this time. Think about it. How much longer are you willing to let those unlived moments hold you hostage? How many more nights are you going to wake up feeling haunted by a presence that's actually just your own soul crying out for recognition? The dreams will persist as long as the wound remains unwitnessed, as long as the exile continues, as long as you keep trying to transcend your pain instead of descending into it with compassion. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, but tonight before you go to sleep. Create a small ritual. Light a candle, sit in silence, and speak directly to the part of you that's been appearing in those dreams. Ask it what it needs. Ask it what it's been trying to tell you. Write the letter you never sent. Say the words that remained trapped in your throat. Give yourself permission to feel everything you've been running from. Integration isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing conversation with the deepest parts of yourself, a practice of listening to the soul letters that arrive each night and taking them seriously instead of dismissing them as random noise. Maybe tonight you'll have another dream about this person, and maybe it'll hurt just as much as it always has. But now you have a map, a way of reading what's actually happening beneath the surface. Now you can ask different questions, perform different rituals, and slowly, breath by breath, dream by dream, bring those exiled fragments back into wholeness. But listen, before you go anywhere, there's something crucial I need you to understand about what happens next in this journey. Because recognizing the wound is only the first step. What your soul is really waiting for is permission to begin again, to step into a completely new chapter where you're no longer defined by what you lost or what remained unlived. And that's exactly what we dive into in the previous video. Your soul has been waiting for this moment to begin again. If what we've explored here resonated with you, if you felt something shift as you recognized yourself in these patterns, then that video is where you need to go next. It's not just another piece of content. It's the bridge between understanding your wounds and actually stepping into the threshold of renewal. Your soul has been preparing for this, gathering the fragments, doing the underground work. Now it's time to honor that readiness and give yourself permission to start fresh from a place of wholeness rather than scarcity. What if the reason you're still here, still listening, still searching, is because some part of you already knows it's time? What if these dreams, this restlessness, this feeling of being haunted by the past, what if all of it has been leading you to this exact moment where you finally choose yourself, where you finally say enough to the exile and yes to coming home? You don't need anyone's permission to heal. You don't need the person from your dreams to validate your pain or grant you closure. You already have everything you need within you, the capacity to witness your own wounds, to perform your own rituals, to write your own soul letters back to the parts of yourself that have been waiting in the silence. If this video opened something in you, if it made you feel seen in a way that most content never does, then do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because what we're building here goes far deeper than surface-level content. This is a sanctuary where the soul is taken seriously, where depth matters more than trends, where healing isn't rushed or reduced to quick fixes. This isn't just another self-help channel. It's a space for people who are willing to descend into their own darkness with a torch, who understand that real transformation happens in the liminal spaces between who you were and who you're becoming. And trust me, there's so much more territory we need to explore together. The language of symbols, the wisdom of archetypes, the rituals that actually work when everything else has failed. Your soul brought you here for a reason. Don't ignore that pull. Don't dismiss this moment as just another video you watched and forgot about. This is an invitation to a different way of living, one where your dreams aren't random noise but sacred guidance, where your wounds aren't failures but portals, where the person who keeps appearing is finally recognized as the mirror they've always been. Go watch Your Soul Has Been Waiting for This Moment to Begin Again, and let that be your next step in this journey. Then come back, keep listening, keep diving deeper, because healing isn't a destination, it's a return, a remembering, a ritual of bringing yourself back home piece by piece until you're finally whole again.